All right. So, again, today we're going to be taking a look at how to create advanced web forms in GW Drupal. The goal of this session is to provide site owners and content managers with the tips on how to configure some of the different pages in the back end of Drupal. So specifically the emails page, which will customize what happens upon form submission. And then we'll also review how to use the form settings and form validation pages and options so that you can create rules and restrictions on your web form field so that you're getting the information that you need when your users submit to your web form. So we'll talk about who can access these settings, how you can actually customize your emails, what the different form setting options are and why you should be using them. And then we'll also take a look at the form validation options and their use cases. And then I'll actually be doing some demonstrations on a few of those validation rules in particular. So, an assumption is that since this is a session on advanced web forms, we're going to assume that you already know how to create a basic web form, and we're not going to be going through those steps. So if you have never created a web form page before, we have a different training session that we offer about once or twice a year on how to create a web form page, and I can provide a link to the resources for that session in the follow-up. But again, we're not going to be going over those steps today on how to create a basic web form. We're going to assume you know how to do that, and we're going to show you that once you have your basic web form up, what are some things you can do to give it some advanced functionality. So who can access these settings? The web form content type and everything tied to it, so all of its settings and functionality, is restricted to users with site administrator or content supervisor permission in the back end of a GW Drupal website. So if you're not a site admin or a content supervisor, not only will you not be able to get to the web form content type, you obviously then won't be able to get to any of the functionality tied to it, and you can kind of see the web form tabs that are visible whenever you create a web form page. The other thing to note is that both themes of Drupal, so the classic GW Drupal theme and the editorial GW Drupal theme websites, will have access to everything we're going to review today. So what I mean by that is this is the classic GW Drupal theme. You can see it's got, the big blue header at the top and sort of the 3-column layout. And this is what everybody who moved into GW Drupal starting in 2012 started with. Around 2015, 2016, we launched a new theme called Editorial, and you can get a look at what it looks like here on the Office of General Counsel's website. And it's got the white header with the blue navigation bar and just some, bigger imagery and things along those lines. So this theme, again, has been around since 2015, 2016. And again, if you are using either the editorial or the classic GW Drupal theme, you will be able to follow the steps for everything that we're doing today. So the first thing we'll talk about is how to customize your emails. The way that you do that, every form field when it's created is assigned what's called a key. The key can be used as what's called a token, which is a dynamic value, something that will automatically fill in with the specific information that your user put into that form field. So these tokens can be used to create custom emails upon form submission. So again, the key is created when based off of the form field name. It will always be all lowercase, and there will be an underscore between any empty spaces in the field key. So for example, if you have a field that's labeled first name, it will have a key value of first underscore name, and you can see that it's in all lowercase. So this is the form field key, and with this, you can create a token. Now what you do with the token is you use that in any open text field under the email settings screen to create a dynamically formatted email. So the way that you would format your token is you would have %value, and then you would put the field key within brackets. So again, taking a look at our first name key that we had before, the format for the token would be %value, then you would have the opening bracket, and then the form field key, which is first underscore name, and then you would close the bracket. And then if you had this token placed inside of the configuration rules for your email, anytime you had somebody submit your web form field, whatever they put in that first name field will now dynamically populate. So if someone named John submits the field, you'll see the name John. If somebody named Ethan submits the field, you'll see the name Ethan, so on and so forth. So in general, you will only need to use your tokens for the email subject field and the email template text box. So the text that actually comes through when the email gets submitted, and then whatever that subject line is for your email. The tokens must always be added manually, and you can include plain text alongside tokens. And generally, you'll only do that in the text box for your email. So let's actually go ahead and take a look at how we would do that. So I've got a form set up here for us to play with today, and you can see there's really nothing fancy going on with our form field here. But I want to go ahead and have a dynamic email set up so that whenever somebody completes this form, the submission comes through with specific dynamic information that I want to see and not any junk. And usually, or I should say, more apropos, this is something that you would want to do when you're sending out the confirmation email to whoever has submitted the form. So I'm going to click on that web form tab so I can get to the backend admin for configuring my form. So the form components are already set up for me. And if I click on the edit tab for any one of these, I can see what my field key is here right underneath the label. And so I'm going to open up in a second tab the email options. So you can see the button right here for emails. I'm just going to open that in a second tab so that we can kind of go back and forth as necessary. So here in my emails rule page, the first thing that I need to say is what email address is going to get the email upon submission. So I'm going to say that it's going to actually go to my email here, and I'm going to put in my work email. If I wanted the email to go to the person who is submitting the form, I would choose component value, and I would leave email address as the value that it should be sending the email to. So for today's session, I'm just going to have it, though, go to me. So I'm going to add the email rule for my email address. And then you can see in the section right here for email header details, you have a couple of open boxes. So anytime you have an open text field like this is the place where you can use an email token, a form token. And then scrolling down, another place where you can use form tokens is in the email template text box. And you can already see an example of some tokens in place. These are kind of the system tokens. They're not really specific to the form field values. These are system level tokens that apply to how forms are set up in general. So I'm going to say for my email subject line, I'm going to customize this. And let's go back and take a look at our published form field. And so we've got a few labels here. We've got name, we've got Gmail, email address, office extension, when can we contact you, and comments. And so this is really a form that's been set up for the purpose of someone's reaching out to us. They want to be contacted back by a person after they submitted the form. So I'm going to say for my email subject, contact, or actually we'll say callback request from, and then we want to get that first name of the person submitting it. So we know that our field key is name. So back here in the email header details box, we're going to say percent value, open bracket, name, close bracket. And so now my email subject line is going to be callback request from whatever the value of the name form field is. I could also put in anything custom here for the email address and the email from name. I'm just going to say component name in this case and let it pull from whatever that name field is. It's going to look at any, you can see here, any text field. You can also, if you have select option fields or any hidden form fields, those can be options you can choose from as well. But I'm just going to say put the from name being whatever they put in at name there. The from email address, I'm going to say from whatever email address has been submitted on the form field. And then that's really all I'm going to do to customize my email header. Now moving down to my email template, I can say this email is to confirm that you have requested a call back to discuss, and then I'm going to put colon, and then the next thing I want to do is on my form, I've got a comment box here, and this is what the person is reaching out to us for. So I want to know, or I want to have in my email, I want it to generate whatever information they've placed in this text box. So if I go back to my form components, and I go to my comments form field, I can see that the field key is comment. So just like I did for the custom email header, I'm going to put %value, open bracket, comments, and then close brackets. The next thing I'm going to do, we actually have a field there that says, please specify when you would like to be contacted. So we're going to say, you have, sorry, let's put this at the bottom. Please be available during the following times for a call from one of our customer, well, that's not how you spell customer at all, customer service representatives. And then just like we did before, we're going to go take a look to see what our field key is. And you can see here that it's a multi-word field key with a lot of underscores in there. So for that reason, I'm going to highlight it. And then I'm going to right-click it, and I'm going to copy it. And that way I can be sure I'm not going to have any typos when I put this field key in. So I'm just going to do %value, open bracket, I'm going to paste, and close the bracket. And then say, thank you, sincerely, the online strategy team. And so it really is that simple. It's just a matter of knowing what your form field keys are, formatting them as tokens, and then formatting your email with those tokens in there. And once you have that formatted, you can then save your email settings. And so now every time somebody submits to this form, I'm going to get an email with the subject line callback request from, and then whatever their first name is. And then I'm going to see that customized email based off of the form field tokens that we just put into the email template text box. So I'm not going to submit the form just yet because we want to place some rules on it first. So going back to our presentation, the next thing that we're going to take a look at are your different form setting options. So the options under your form settings, they allow you to control what happens when a site visitor actually clicks the submit button. And these are some fairly simple settings that you can set up, but they're still pretty critical as far as having a seamless, positive user experience. So the first thing is your confirmation message. There's a default text box on that confirmation page that a lot of people fill in, but we never recommend using it, and that's because the actual confirmation page that gets generated, it loses all of the branding on your site. It's a very basic page that just has the text for whatever you put in there and a very small, simple text link that says go back to form. So that can be a little bit jarring for a user to see. They'll no longer see your navigation, whatever local brand and header image that you have there, all of that will be gone, and all they'll see is the actual text that you put into that text box. So for that reason, what we actually recommend that you do instead is to create a separate general content page that will serve as your confirmation message. There's then a field on the form settings page where you can enter this link, and it's called the custom URL field, and it's underneath the text box. So if we go to our form settings page, you can see this is the out-of-the-box confirmation message field that a lot of people fill in that I spoke to before, but we always recommend that you bypass that and go to the redirection location section instead. and then use the custom URL field to create a custom confirmation or to redirect to a custom confirmation page. And again, we recommend that you set this up using the general content page. Copy whatever that link is for that general content page and paste it in here. And then every time somebody submits your form, they'll be redirected to that page, and that page will still have all of your branding, your navigation. It can have breadcrumbs if it's been set up appropriately so they can get back to the form, and it will just be a more seamless experience for your users. The next section is the rules on what happens or how many submissions that basically the form can take. So you can limit the total number of submissions that the form can ever receive. By default, it is set to unlimited, but you can limit that to a specific number of submissions ever, per hour, per day, or per week. And then you can also put a per user submission limit on there. So again, the default is to say that a person can submit to this form an unlimited number of times, or you can restrict that to a specific number of submissions, again, ever, every hour, every day, or every week. And the way that it checks to see how many times a user has submitted to your form is whether they happen to have a login to the back end of your site, which is unusual. So most generally it happens based off of the IP address from where they're submitting from, and if cookies are being stored in the computer, it might actually look at cookies as well, but mostly it looks at the IP address. So if it sees that this IP address is already submitted to the form once and you've placed a restriction of one submission ever, it's not going to allow them to submit to the form again. And then the last thing on this form that you generally want to take a look at and make sure that you've paid some attention to is the status of your form, whether it's opened or closed. And that literally just means, can people see the form fields at that time or not? If you have it set to close, they'll see whatever opening message that you have in the web form page, which is whatever information you put into the body field for the web form page, and that's this text for me here. But they would not see any of the form fields. And we actually recommend that once you no longer need a form field, that rather than deleting the form page or unpublishing it, you just set the status of the form to closed. That way your users won't get a 404 error. They'll still get to this form page, and then you can use the body field to explain that this form is no longer available for whatever the reason might be. It just creates a better positive experience for your users, and then they don't feel like something's broken and they have to, submit an IT support ticket or reach out to your office, but rather they get up front the information saying this form is no longer available. If you need help, these are the steps that you need to complete at this point. So that is how you would use the form setting options. And so now getting into the real, truly advanced part of setting up an advanced web form, and those are your form validation options. So the form validation options actually allow you to specifically control the behavior of the individual form fields. There's some basic validation rules applied to most of the different form field types. So for instance, if you have an email form field, it's going to validate whether or not an email address has been placed in there. And you can also say for basically all of the different form fields whether it's required or not. But let's say you needed to really get specific on the format of the email address that they're putting in there. Maybe you only want GW email addresses. You don't want gmail.com. You don't want yahoo.com. You only want GW email addresses. Your form validation options will allow you to do that. So we're going to take a look at 11 of them specifically. We'll just have a quick review of those, but there are actually 24 different validation options available to you. Obviously, we don't have time to go over 24 options, so again, we're only going to be reviewing 11 of them in today's presentation, and then we're actually going to be working with about, I think 5 or 6 of them to actually show you how you would set up your rules on the form field that we have today, or perhaps on a form that you've worked on yourself. So the 11 field validation options we're going to talk about today are pattern, starts with, ends with, words blacklist, valid URL, sum of several, minimum number of selections, maximum number of selections, exact number of selections, minimum length, and maximum length. So the first one is pattern, and what pattern allows you to do is to specify the exact format for entry on your comment boxes, which is the text area form field, and on text fields. And so I found this to be really helpful if I need to specify the formatting for a phone number, a mailing address, an ID number, and then sometimes I do see people using the text field for email addresses. This is also a way that you can specify that you're getting an email address in that field as opposed to something else. So you can kind of see here over in the screenshot the rules that you need to follow in creating that pattern, and you'll see that for each of the different validation rules that are in there, they'll give you some tips on how you actually need to format that rule. You also have the ability to generate a custom error message if somebody tries to submit the form field without the proper formatting that you've specified. You can say here what that error message is that they will see. The next rule we'll talk about is the starts with option, and this it's basically self-explanatory. It allows you to specify exactly how an email, number, text field, or comment box field must begin. So again, this is something that I find to be useful with phone numbers. So for instance, we obviously have a pretty set pattern for phone numbers at the George Washington University, and if you ask somebody for their office phone number, you can say, I know it should start with 202-994, so I'm going to say that a form validation option rule here is that the phone number has to start with 202-994 if they're on the Foggy Bottom campus. If they're on Mount Vernon or VSTC, maybe you need to tweak what that validation rule is, but you still do have that ability to specify what that format should be. And in this case, it's just a free-form text field, and whatever you put here, that's going to be your validation option, your validation rule. Conversely, you have the ability to use ends with, and so it does the exact same thing, except it's looking to see how that form field has how it's ending. I use this one a lot, particularly for website addresses. For our training sessions, whenever I set up a registration form field and I ask if you have a website already out there using any one of our systems, I ask, what's your website address? And I always put a rule in there saying it has to end with .gw.edu, because if it doesn't end with that, then it's actually not one of our websites. And in that case, whatever training offering we might have at the time won't be useful to them. So I always try to validate that the website that the person is working on or says that they own is actually a GW website, not something running on a platform that we can't help them with. And I find that the ends with validation rule is very useful in making sure that I can do that. But again, it's also useful for email addresses if you accidentally use the text field instead of the email field or actually it also applies to the email field, but it allows you to verify that you're getting the email address for the appropriate organization that you're looking for. So again, if you only want GW email addresses versus like a Yahoo or an Outlook.com or a Gmail, and you, again, can also specify how that phone number needs to end. I don't find it as useful for phone numbers, but I do know that sometimes there are use cases out there that maybe I'm not aware of. So the next one could also be pretty useful, and that's the words blacklist, and it's pretty self-explanatory as well. It allows you to restrict specific words from being submitted in your text field and in your comment boxes. So if there are specific words that you do not want people using when they submit your form field, you can use the words blacklist to restrict those words. Now, keep in mind that GW Drupal already has a global words blacklist that's been developed into the system, so we try to comment or weed out profanity and things along those lines. But if there are some words that for whatever reason you do not want submitted onto your web form, you can use the words blacklist form validation option to restrict the ability to submit the form with those words in place. So this is another form field option where you can also put a custom error message in there, so you can say, please resubmit the form omitting the words and then whatever those words might be. The valid URL option, this one works on your text field, and it allows you to basically just validate that whatever website address that the user says they put in, it's actually a true website address. And I found that this is helpful as far as being sure that they have .com, .gwu, .edu, .org, whatever the case might be. So as opposed to specifying that a website that's been provided is a GW website, maybe you just want to make sure they're actually putting in a website address at all and not just putting in plain text. So you can use the valid URL field to actually indicate or to actually validate that whatever they put into that text field is actually a website address. So the sum of several option can be pretty useful. I myself have not found a need to use it personally, but I've definitely worked with users across GW who could benefit from this option. So what this does is it allows you to say that from a select number of fields, so maybe you've got 3 or 4 different fields on your form, and you need to be sure that a user fills out at least 1 or 2 of them before they proceed. The sum of several validation rule will allow you to do that. And so it works with your date field, your email field, your file field, which is for file uploads, the number field, the select options, the text area, which is your comment box, your text field, and your time field. And so some use cases that I thought of when researching this particular validation rule is maybe you're trying to obtain contact information, or you're asking for preferences from a user. So maybe you need them to give either the email address or the phone number, but not necessarily both. Or if you need preferences, maybe you're asking them to select 3 out of 4 options within your field. You can use the sum of several validation field to ensure that they fill out at least, some set of numbers of the different fields available on your form. And you can do this without actually making any of those fields required. And that's something that I actually should have stated at the beginning of reviewing all of these different validation options. They allow you to basically kind of create shadow requirements. You don't have to make the actual form field required, but you can put some requirements on the fields via the validation option. So again, with this one, we're saying maybe these individual fields are not required, but they are required to at least fill out some number of them on the back end. And again, maybe the website address field wasn't required, but we're at least requiring that it's truly a website address, so on and so forth. So the next one we'll take a quick look at is minimum selections. This one allows you to do exactly what it says, to select a minimum number of options within your select options field. And as a reminder, your select options field is what you use to create your check boxes, radio buttons, drop-down lists, and list boxes. So if you need them to select at least 2 options out of your check boxes, your minimum selections option is going to be your best bet so that you can make sure that you're getting at least 2 selections from your users. Conversely, there's also the maximum selection options, which is saying, okay, well, out of these 4 options, you have the maximum number that you can select is maybe 3. That way they don't try to select everything and then really give you maybe an unuseful form submission. And then there's also an option for exact number of selections. So if you need them to select exactly 3 options or exactly 2 options, you can use the exact number of selection options to put that specific requirement on the form field instead. And then finally, I put these 2 rules together because they're so closely related, but there's your minimum and maximum length, and this can be applied to your email field, your number field, your text field, your comment box, again, that's your text area field, and it sets a character limit on these fields. So a minimum character limit if that's what you need, or a maximum character limit if that's what you need. And the 2 most common places where I think this would be useful, obviously, are your comment boxes. You don't want people to submit essays in your comment boxes, but you need to at least be sure that you're getting a quality amount of information from them so that you can actually follow up with them appropriately. And then there's also phone numbers. Phone numbers in the United States, we know, are excuse me, are 10 characters. So you can say on your phone numbers, there's a maximum allowed value of 10 characters and a minimum allowed value. Maybe you don't want the area code, so you can say a minimum of 7, a maximum of 10. So those are all of the different form validation options. Do you have any questions on those before we actually get into using some of these validation rules on the form that we have set up? All right. Well, then let's go ahead and put some rules on our web form. So here's our form again, and just to remind you, this is a form that's been set up that basically when somebody submits to it, we're expecting that they want to get a call back from our office. So we've asked them to provide their name as a required field, and then we've asked how can we contact you, and then we have a field for the GW email address and their office extension. We want to know when we can contact them, and then we have a required comments box, and you can see here that in the description I said a maximum of 500 characters. So we're going to put a couple of rules on some of these form fields. We're going to specify that our GW email address has to end in gwu.edu. And then for the office extension, we're going to assume this person is on Foggy Bottom. So with Foggy Bottom extensions, it's always 4 dash and then 4 numbers. So we're going to put a pattern rule on this one saying that it has to follow that pattern of 4 dash and then the final 4 numbers of their extension. We're going to request that they provide at least 2 time frames during which they can be reached. So we're going to say that they have to provide at least 2 options between all of these selections. And then for that comment box, we're going to put some blacklisted words on there, and then we're also going to put a maximum character length of 500 characters. All right, so the first thing you'll do is you'll click on web form, and that will take you to the admin page for the actual web form fields and all of the rules around them, and you'll go to form validation. And when you go to form validation, you're presented with the list of all of the different form field rules. Now, you can see that they all are active links right now. If you did not have the appropriate form fields on your form to use one of these options, it would just look like plain text. You would not be able to click on it. So that's how you know whether or not you can use a rule or not. If it's an active link, that means that you have the appropriate form fields on your form to be able to use one of these validation rules. If it's just plain text, you do not have the appropriate form fields on your form to use that particular rule. So we are going to start with maximum length on our comment box. And so you'll give your rule a name, and I'm going to say comment box character length. This is a behind the scenes thing only for you, so you don't really have to worry about this having some kind of formal name. It's just for you to know what this rule is that you created, what it's supposed to be doing. The next thing you'll see is it will actually list out the components that you have put in on your form that are eligible for this rule. By components, it just means the form fields that you've created on your form that are eligible to use this rule. So I want this to apply to my comment box. If I wanted it to apply to any other of these other ones, I could select them as well, and they would all share the rule. And then the next thing I'm going to do is just go down to this text field for maximum number of characters, and I'm going to put in 500. I'm going to say add rule. And now I can see that I've got my rule in there for a maximum number of characters available on my comment box. And it will show you your rule name, what the validation is, what form fields you've applied it to, and then you have the operations column where you can either go in and edit that rule or you can actually delete it. And if you ever click that you want to delete a rule, it's always going to give you a warning saying, are you sure this action can't be undone? And then you actually have to confirm that you want to delete it, or you click cancel. So then the next thing that we want to do let's see, is we want sum of several. And so again, this rule is saying that out of a bank of different form fields that you have, you can specify that they fill out some set number of these fields. So back on our form, we said, we want to reach out to you and give you a call back, but you either need to provide us with a phone number or you need to provide us with an email. So we'll say callback preference. And for this, we're going to say GW email address and office extension. We want them to fill out at least one of these fields. And so to do that, you can see down here under the number to be completed, it's giving you an idea of what you need to actually enter into this number to be completed field. And so the value that you see here between the parentheses, and I don't know if that's too small to see or not, but it's saying enter greater than 1 if the user must complete at least one of the selected components. Enter equals 3 if the user must complete exactly 3 of the selected components. Enter greater than 2 if the user must complete at most, 2 of the selected components. So we just want them to do at least one. And I'm saying at least one because if they want to give their email address and their Office extension, they're absolutely free to do that. But we want to make sure they at least do one of those two options. So I'm going to add that rule. Okay. So then the next thing that we want to do is to set an ends with rule so that when they provide their email address, we know for certain that it's their GW email address and not a Gmail or a Yahoo or some other email service outside of the university. So I'm going to say GW email address. And I'm going to select that form field. I'm going to say it needs to end with @gwu.edu. And I'm going to add that rule. And then, oh, you know what? I actually skipped over what I wanted to do, which is minimum number of selections required. For this one, we're going to do that to our select options field, which is let us know the at least 2 time frames that we can call you back. So when our callback time frames. And so since I only have one select option form field in there, that's the only option I have to pick from. And this is where you can specify how many of the selections they have to do. So we're going to say they have to provide at least 2 time frames that we can call them. I gave them an option of 4 different time frames, but I want them to select at least 2 of those time frames. And then finally, we are going to put a pattern validation rule so that for the phone number that the user provides, we actually just said we want their extension. So we're going to assume that they're on Foggy Bottom. So we're going to say Foggy Bottom extension. And for the pattern, you can see down here, it gives you some pointers on what you can put into this field to make sure that you're getting the information that you need. So for any letter A to Z, you're going to put the @ symbol. You're going to put the pound or hashtag for any number between 0 and 9. If you need to have more than 2 patterns in there, you're going to separate them with the pipe. And it's hard to actually highlight that, but the pipe on your keyboard is typically above your enter key, and you'll hit shift and then the backslash key usually has the pipe on it. So I'm sorry, / key typically has the pipe on it. So you'll just hit shift, the / key, and because you have shift on there, you'll get the pipe instead. And then if there are any specific characters that you need to show up, you can put those specific characters. So again, since this is a Foggy Bottom extension, we specifically want it to be 4 dash, and then whatever the 4 digits are for that person's extension. So I'll put pound, 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 pound. And now it's going to validate that this is the format that they have for their extension. And now I can also do, or actually I'm required to do, because you can see there's a red asterisk there, a custom error message. So I can say that your Office extension must be formatted as 4 dash. I'm going to put X's here because that's typically what we tend to see or use when we want to indicate to users that they need to put numbers in. But I will also specify to them where X is your extension. And then I'm going to add that rule. And so now I've got my 5 rules on my form. my Foggy Bottom extension rule, the callback time frame, GW email address, the callback preference for if they want to be emailed or called, and then the character linked on my comment box. So I'm going to open my form up in a private window so I can fill it out. So my name is Natasha. My GW email address, I'm going to put natasha@gmail.com. For my extension, I'm going to put 5-1234. I'm only going to select one option here. And then for my comment box, I'm going to copy a whole lot of text over here. And paste that into my comment box window. And then I'm going to click submit. And once that processes, you'll see that we have a couple of errors in here. So the first thing it shows me is that my Office extension must be formatted, and it tells me what that extension needs to be. And you can see that that form field is highlighted in red. It also gives me the errors for the other form fields that I haven't appropriately filled out. So please select at least two options for when can we contact you. My GW email address must end with @gwu.edu, and then my comment should be at most 500 characters long. And each one of those fields, save for the select options, has been highlighted in red so that I know I need to go back there and actually make some changes. So instead of @gmail.com, we'll say @gwu.edu. We will fix my extension, and then I'll say that you can also contact me between 1 p.m. and 3 p.m. And then here in the comment box, don't actually know what the character length is that I've got going on, but I'm just going to shorten it down as best I can. It's still fairly long, just in case we're going to get a little more of that text. And then we're going to click submit. All right, and now I don't have a confirmation page set up for this form field, and so this is actually giving you an indicator of what you see when you don't. You just get a simple out-of-the-box thank you, your submission has been received, and then you get a link to go back to the form. If I had used that default confirmation text box, the only difference I would see here is right here where it says thank you, your submission has been received. That would be replaced with whatever I put in that text box, but it would still be a fairly awkward looking confirmation page. And so that again is why we recommend that you actually create a general content page and then redirect to that to be the confirmation page for your web form. And so I'm going to go back over to my inbox. And so this is the email that I received upon submitting that form. And if you'll recall, we did some customizations on the email templates earlier in the presentation. So we said, this email is to confirm that you have requested a callback to discuss, and then here's the text from the comment box. And it says, please be available during the following times for a call from one of our customer service representatives. And these are the two time frames that I selected. And then it simply says, thank you sincerely, the online strategy team. And so this is the dynamically generated email based off of those form field tokens that we put into the email templates under the email rule options earlier in the presentation. And so that's really the whole agenda for today. That's how you would set up a customized email so that upon submission, your users can get something custom and user-friendly. For them, you can also put in custom emails, obviously, to go to you or somebody within your office if they need to follow up, instead of getting sort of that generic machine-generated email that most people see and they're kind of like, what do I do with this? You can actually set your email up to be a lot more user-friendly by utilizing those form field tokens on the email screen. And then on your form validation options, you can put in those various rules to say, what happens when somebody actually fills in this form? I need to get specific information. I need their email address to be formatted a certain way. I need to make sure they're actually providing me a website address and not something else. I need a specific number of selections with the checkboxes. I need to make sure they provide either their email or their phone number. I need a character length and any other type of use case that you might actually come up against when managing your own website and your own web forms. You've got all of these great validation options in there that can really help you specify how your form will behave and what your users have to do when they're filling out the form. So I know I went over a lot today. It's probably a lot to take in, and I'm going to be sharing the resources with you. But do you have any questions for anything that I didn't go over? Is there a specific thing that you've ever wondered or wished that you could do, and you're wondering if there's a validation rule in there that will help you do that? And I'm going to go ahead and take you off of mute, so if you have a question, feel free to just speak up. There's nobody else on the line.
I was interested more in if we have people uploading pictures or media files, is there a way to limit what kind of file formats they can upload or limit the size of the picture, things like that?
Sure. So going back to the web form tab, I'm going to add a file component field. I'm going to say supporting documentation. And we'll add that in. And so the file field has some out-of-the-box validation rules, which you can see here. The first one is the max file upload size, and it's set to 2 megabytes, but you can see down here that you can actually set it to be lower if you need it to be lower, and then you can set it to be a maximum of 20 megabytes. But the default is for the maximum upload size to be 2 megabytes, and then followed by a sort of grid here of the different file fields that you can specify that you'll accept. And these are the ones that are available by default. If you needed to put something here that's not listed within one of these checkboxes, you can add that extension in this text field here. And so it's really robust and pulling from the most typically requested types of documents. So the 3 most common image file types. For documents, you actually have HTML for like website documents, but you have your PDF doc, and then docx for older or newer versions of Microsoft Word. Same for PowerPoint and newer versions of PowerPoint with PPTX, Excel, and XLX. And then you can also get XML files if you need it. You can select some options for different media files and then different archive files, most common of which being your zip file. So that's how you can specify the file type that you'll accept for those uploads. And I recommend using the description box here to say what types of files that you would actually accept. So acceptable file types are DOX. Can't spell. And then just making sure that those are the file types that you've actually selected down here. You know what? We should definitely accept PDFs because those are the most common. And then you would just click Save. And that's on my form field. We can see now we have an upload option here and then the description here that says the file types that are acceptable. Is there anything else?
Is there any way to do anything like skip logic with web forms, or is that not really functionality that's available for Drupal?
Can you give me a specific use case?
Um, like if we ask them a yes or no question, if they answer yes, we would ask for further information.
Mm.
Or for instance, if we ask them, do you plan to return next semester to participate in classes? If they click no, then there might be follow-up questions asking them why not. And then if they select yes, it would go to different questions pertinent to.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So that is called conditional form fields in Drupal, and that's not supported right now, but we actually are testing that at this very moment, and I'm hoping that we'll be able to roll that out to everybody before the calendar year ends. And I only say before the calendar year ends because we're coming up on the holidays here shortly, but that is something that we're testing to make sure that it works appropriately, and we're hoping to roll that out to you guys very soon.
Awesome.
Is there anything else?
No, I guess the only other last question is that so the main use that we use for our web form is applications for participation in a language competition.
Mm-hmm.
Recently, that website switched from Drupal to like a GW blog.
Oh, WordPress, yes.
Yeah. Do they have similar functionality or with web forms, or would creating a Drupal web form be more advisable?
So the WordPress service at GW Blogs, it's got different, the way that forms are built there is completely different than the way that they're built here. And I cannot speak off the top of my head to just how granular you can make the permissions on the form fields. It's something that, I would be happy to test out during office hours with you if you would like. So unfortunately, I can't say which one is going to be better or worse. What that really comes down to is how easy is it going to be within your office to, administer this form field, to actually, work with it day to day, and also which one provides a better user experience for your users. So once they submit the form field in Drupal, you can get your emails. You don't get those conditional form fields. Maybe that's something that you can get in WordPress. And there might be some other things that the user might be able to experience upon form submission with the WordPress forms. I just don't know.
Okay.
So yeah, it really just kind of comes down to the experience that you have as a website owner and that your users have on the other end of the spectrum when they're using those form fields to make the determination of which one's going to be better for you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so then I have recorded today's session. I will be sharing that in the follow-up, as well as a link to our older session on just the basics of setting up a web form page in the first place. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out or to stop by office hours. This semester, which is fall 2017, we are in Hall of Government every Thursday morning from 10 till noon.
Okay, great.
All right, thank you for joining. Have a good day.